Now, let's take a few foreign stories, starting from the Republic of Cameroon, where the United Nations has called on the authorities to guarantee free and transparent elections as 92-year-old President Paul Biya seeks an 8th term in office. UN Human Rights spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence voiced concern over rising restrictions on opposition parties, citing banned gatherings, irregular voter registration, and the exclusion of candidates from the race. Biya, Africa's second longest serving leader after Equatorial Guinea's Teodoro Obiang, has ruled Cameroon since 1982, but is often absent due to poor health. His government faces corruption allegations, Boko Haram violence, and a separatist conflict in English-speaking regions that has shut schools and displaced thousands. Biya last won re-election in 2018 with over 70% of the vote in a poll marred by irregularities. A massive landslide this week devastated Sudan's western Darfur region, killing more than 1,000 people and flattening an entire mountain village. The disaster struck the village of Tarasin in the Jebel Mara area after days of heavy rain. Rebel group SLM, led by Abdulwahid Al-Nur, said only one survivor was found and appealed for urgent help to recover those buried under mud debris. Images posted online show whole sections of the mountainside collapsing onto homes. Darfur's governor, Mini Minawi, called it a humanitarian tragedy beyond what our people can bear and urged international aid groups to intervene. But ongoing war between Sudan's army and the RSF paramilitary has made much of Darfur inaccessible, complicating rescue and relief efforts. And finally, Angela Rayner, this past week, resigned as Deputy Prime Minister of Britain and also as Housing Secretary after failing to pay enough tax on her £800,000 flat in East Sussex. Rayner also stepped down as Deputy Labour leader, a move which is expected to trigger a new leadership election by party members. Her departure comes after the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, said Rayner had acted with integrity, but concluded that she had breached the ministerial code. In a letter to Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Rayner said she accepted she did not meet the highest standards when purchasing her property. I'm now being joined by retired diplomat, Ambassador Joe Keshi, to look at these stories. Ambassador Keshi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
for obliging us. Each time will come calling.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, Ambassador, let's start with Angela Rayner. She had to resign because she said she took legal advice on tax, and that apparently she was misled. Now, the ethics advisor is saying, well, she could have sought further advice because she's guilty of a misdemeanor, even if she meant well. Other point about, oh, my son, I was setting up a trust for my son who is living with long-term disability. That did not wash with the Conservative Party, particularly with Kemi Badenoch, who said no, she must resign. Now she has resigned. She is said to be a bridge between the Prime Minister and the party. And this makes the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, very vulnerable with the hard-hitting left wing of the party. And now people are saying, well, maybe this will lead to early elections. And Labour seems to be in very serious trouble. But the major issue here is about integrity, accountability, and a governance system having even an ethics advisor. If it had been in Nigeria, it would have been a different story. Do you agree, sir?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think what one needs to say about this case is that where we pretend in this country that we have no clear-cut idea of what a strong institution means, what accountability means, what integrity means, the British are again, trying to educate us, particularly in this country. As you rightly said, if it was in this country, we wouldn't be hearing all this kind of thing. Some ministers are being accused of one thing or the other. EFCC has simply gone deaf. You know, they are reading the body language of the president. But in civilized countries where accountability is taken seriously, where integrity is of high concern to even the people in office, you saw exactly what the Deputy Prime Minister did. She offered herself to be examined, and they found her, not that she was totally guilty, but that she did not seek further advice, and as a result of that, she has to resign. This is what integrity means. This is what accountability means. So for those in this country, and again, I go back to what I said, EFCC does not wait for the president or for somebody to direct it to begin to probe anybody. But look at all the accusations flying here and left about some ministers buying houses overseas and misbehaving. Nothing has been done. No question has been issued. Even the presidency is not even showing any concern. What does that tell you? It just tells you that we are not serious about accountability. We are not serious about the issues of integrity. And if we do not address some of these issues, it will continue to be, it will continue to escalate. And people will not take it that doing the wrong thing is the right thing in this country. And I think that's where we are today, But the British are again teaching us a lesson. If we are interested, we can learn from what has just happened in Britain. As for the Prime Minister going for another election, I'm not too sure he would call an early election. I think that she will try and weather the storm, particularly because of what they are now doing with regards to migration. She will try and weather the storm and probably wait for some months or a year before attempting to go for an election.
Well, Ambassador, before we talk about, let's talk about Sudan next, facing a terrible humanitarian crisis. And that country has been at war. South Sudan, about 12 million people displaced. The people are suffering from cholera attacks, all kinds of disease outbreak in the Darfur region. And then you have the government in Khartoum and also the paramilitary force throwing that country into a civil war. And then this natural disaster. Rainfall and people dying, over 1,000 people are dying. They don't even have a proper account yet. South Sudan is Sudan generally so unlucky. I mean, I used to play with the point that, look, Sudan, the world seems to have forgotten the people of Sudan and South Sudan.
Absolutely.
They talk about Ukraine, they talk about Gaza, but it's as if South Sudan does not exist.
I think that South Sudan is so unfortunate because these disasters, including the war, they are taking place at a time in which, for the international community, which is led by some superpowers, Sudan is not on their radar at all. They are more interested in issues like Gaza. Even Gaza has been neglected, more like Ukraine and the Russian, civil war. So it's unfortunate these things are happening in Sudan. And look, in the years gone by, the United States and a number of countries have led efforts to help Sudan. But today, under Donald Trump, I'm not sure that he's going to focus on countries he previously described as shithole countries. And this is a tragedy of Sudan. To compound the crisis, the disaster that just occurred, Darfur is inaccessible. And African nations do not have that capacity to respond to this kind of crisis. So except the West, decides to help, Sudan is almost in a very, hopeless situation as it is now.
But the UN Human Rights Office says it is mobilizing humanitarian efforts.
They do, but let's also bear in mind that some of this humanitarian effort is also as a result of funds coming in from the United States to, put all these things together. With the cuts being made by Donald Trump, sooner or later, the United Nations itself is going to run into serious problems about, being able to help. Look, they are trying to help in Gaza. They are trying to help in areas like Sudan. I think this brings us again to the question of African leaders and, the graph for power, which oftentimes leads to instability, as we are seeing in the case of the Sudan. And you can see what is so tragic about Sudan is that even Africa itself has more or less given up, and they are not paying attention to what is happening in Sudan. The only places where African leaders are focusing, it's the crisis between Rwanda and
Democratic Republic
of Congo. Everybody seems to have forgotten the Sudan, which is so unfortunate. So
what will you recommend? And which countries in Africa do you think can step in? Egypt at the time showed interest.
A couple of years ago, Nigeria also showed interest, and we helped Sudan. I think meetings were held here in Lagos, and we helped Sudan to cobble together a government. But today, I'm not even sure we have that capacity ourselves to help. So Sudan is it's on its own. It's really a very sad. And yet Sudan is a very important country in this part of the world. I don't know exactly how anybody can help, except the world turns its attention following this disaster, before I think Sudan can get any relief.
But perhaps the bigger problem with Sudan is the leadership.
No, look.
From Sudan to South Sudan.
The bigger problem with Africa itself is leadership. So, because I'm sure we're going to talk about beer sooner than later, So look, when leaders get involved with this, particularly the struggle for power and destroy a whole country, because of power. Look at the leadership in Southern Sudan, You're talking of the old man in Cameroon. Some of the people in Southern Sudan should also be talking of retiring and looking for a new generation of leaders to see whether they can rescue Southern Sudan.
Well, talking about leadership, yes, Paul Biya in Cameroon. He's been there since 1982, spent over 40 years, 43 years actually. The only man who has served longer is Teodoro Obiang.
Is he Teodoro older than the man in Uganda?
Well, these people. Obiang, Museveni, there is also in Rwanda, Paul Kagame.
No, Paul Kagame has not gone as old as these people.
No, but it looks like he's coming. And in Equatorial Guinea, Nguema has stayed so long. One of his sons sold one of the aircraft belonging to the company and pocketed the money. Another one is misbehaving in the oil and gas sector. Sweet. And then in Cameroon, 92-year-old Paul Biya has suspended about 73 persons. They are not allowed to even say they want to be president. About 53 political opposition leaders have been arrested. And he's over 90, he's hardly ever in the country, and he wants to remain president. What is wrong with African leaders?
No, I think look, we all know what is wrong with African leaders. We've been unfortunate with leadership in Africa. There was this joke a few years ago. The Asians were complaining about tsunami and so many other things happening to them and so on. And they went to God and complained. And then they gave an example that, look, Africans do not experience this kind of disaster that we're experiencing. And the story goes on to say that God said to them, have you looked at the leaders I gave them? So maybe this is a problem. But no, seriously, my concern about Cameroon is what happens if this old man if he dies. Because I'm not sure he has a designated successor. What has happened in the past, if you go back and look at what happened in Ivory Coast a few years ago.
After
Boyen. By the way, before he died, when we were negotiating with the crisis in Liberia and Sierra Leone, this old man comes to meeting, and as soon as they virtually bring him and put him on a seat, then he slips off. And the conversation in the conference, hall every time is that if he dies, there'll be crisis of secession in Ivory Coast. It happened. And the same thing is probably likely to happen in Cameroon. I'm afraid that if care is not taken, it might actually lead to a military coup and the military taking over in that country. So I guess that for we in Nigeria, we should just begin to prepare ourselves that, look, anything could go wrong in a neighboring country, and we should be prepared on how we are going to respond to it. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, a man who is already 92, he's been in power for God knows how many years, he wants to contest another election that he's not going to campaign. By the way, he's not going to campaign, because if he's going to, look, this election is more or less a foregone conclusion, he's going to win. If he has banned every likely opposition leader, banned political parties, he's going to win the election and he's going to become president again. So the vested interests that are supporting him now are going to be those who will create the crisis of succession as a struggle for power when he eventually, passes on. And that will happen sooner or later, whether we like it or not, because again, his health is not that as strong as it used to be many years ago. So we should just be preparing ourselves to what happened in Cameroon.
Sir, we talk about Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Uganda, Rwanda, and this they are sit-tight.
You said Rwanda is coming. Let's not put him in that list
they're almost there, because Kagame doesn't look like he wants to step aside anytime soon. But can it ever happen here in Nigeria? There were things in the past we said can never happen in Nigeria, but it happened here. Can we get to a point where some character will say, I want to be president for life? In this same country, where all of us are waking up and sleeping and waking up.
Again, Dr. Abati, many years ago when we were serving in Sierra Leone and so many things were happening, we were saying it can never happen in Nigeria. I have seen so many of those things happen in this country. So you can never say what would happen. And the way we are going now, the way sycophancy, has taken over the whole. Sometimes what leads to dictatorship is when people refuse to tell the leader the truth or help the leader to navigate, some events and lead him on the path that should lead to, good governance and the rest of it. But if care is not taken, we might not have the kind of dictatorship that Cameroon has experienced. But yes, it could happen. But it could happen at the rate that we are going today in this country. And when you look at the politics of this country, where everybody now stands on one mandate, opposition leaders are, look at the destabilization of the political parties. Look at the destabilization of the political parties in this country. One minister has been used to wreck PDP. Former leaders have been used to wreck Labour Party. And even the new party the new parties that are trying to come up are not being registered. And you are telling me that it can't happen in this country? No.
But President Tinubu says he believes in federalism. He's a champion of democracy, which is one of the reasons why he says state police is an idea whose time has come.
Sure. Let's put all this in. That does not stop anybody who wants to be a dictator in this country from becoming a dictator. If we were interested in real democracy in this country, look, a lot should have been done to ensure that we operate a real federal system. But the way things are going now, we are actually destroying the whole concept of federalism and trying to strengthen the center and weakening the regions. The fact that so much money is being poured into it's not federalism. Oh, by the way, so much is being given to the states, in addition to FARC, but without a corresponding demand for what the resources will be spent on. You can't do, the federal government in the United States will not give you so much money, and you are not accounting for it, or you have no project. Just one day you just get up and say, take. No, it does not happen.
Anyway. We'd like to thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us on today's edition of This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.